Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Pace Athletics Alumni Spotlight, presented by New York Presbyterian, the official healthcare provider of Pace Athletics. Today, we are joined by 2015 Pace graduate, Jeane Drury. Jeane, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you were a multi-sport athlete while at Pace, playing both women's basketball and softball. Certainly a rarity these days at a collegiate level to play two sports. Was that always kind of the plan for you? And kind of why don't you just talk us through the uniqueness of it and, your experience playing both sports?
Yeah, definitely. It really was a dream for me. I always wanted to play two sports in college, especially when I hit high school and I didn't really know which direction I wanted to go. So playing two sports was definitely a dream for me. I think it shaped a lot of who I am today. It taught me a lot about responsibility and time management, dedication, hard work, and really shaped me into the person that I am now. It was challenging though. I won't say that it was easy. So I was always in season. Initially, I struggled finding a balance between academics, athletics, social activities, and other commitments that I had. So I worked on those challenges and eventually just prioritized what was most important to me. And I loved it though. It was definitely an opportunity I was looking for, and when that opportunity came up sophomore year, I definitely took full advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine it was busy times for sure. You know, what would you say was the biggest, almost, dream come true? But what was was one of the positives? Were you able to was basketball, you were able to stay in shape year round? Was that kind of helpful to play both sports?
Absolutely. So being in season all the time, you're always at practice, whether it was softball or basketball. And the way it worked for me was I played fall ball, softball wise. Then as soon as fall ball was over, I went over and started playing basketball, and the season had just started. So full gear into basketball there. And then once the regular season was over for basketball, I went back to softball, and it was essentially spring break, and we were ready to go. So I was always in season, always in the gym, and definitely in shape, which is something that I have always strived to be. So it's definitely a positive.
Yeah, that's very cool. It's cool. It is a busy year though. Okay, so I mentioned 2015 graduate, not too long ago, but since then there have been some changes to the Pace Pleasantville campus. Notably, we'll talk about the softball facility, a new softball field on the Pleasantville campus. You guys, when you were there, were playing on Briarcliff. Very nice field now on Pleasantville campus. Don't have to go over to Briarcliff. Have you seen the new facility? Are you kind of jealous of the new facility?
I am a little, I won't lie. So I have seen the new facility. I went a couple years ago, watched one of the practices there, and the field is just really incredible. I actually lived on Briarcliff while I was there so that I was closer to the softball fields. But now that isn't necessary anymore. So the new field is really incredible. Really happy for the girls that get to play on that now.
Yeah, it is. It is a very nice field, and very young field. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Upon graduation, you went into a career in athletics, you could say, and currently work in the ticket office for the Tampa Bay Rays. Why don't you which for people that work in athletics or work in sports, would think would be a very cool opportunity. So I'm intrigued to kind of hear about your path, after you left Pace and kind of how you got to where you are right now.
Absolutely. So, a month or two after I graduated from Pace, I accepted a seasonal sales role with the Rays. And that sales role was supposed to last for about 6 months. And it was an inside sales position. So, it usually has an end date to that. I was really actually intimidated by sales initially. So, I didn't know how I was going to do in that position. After a few months, though, I was hired on full time. And fell in love with the sales process and building relationships with clients. I've been with the team for about 5.5 years now, so I've had several different roles within that, starting out at the seasonal position. I was then a coordinator in our ticket sales department. Went back to a selling role shortly after that, and was an account executive. And for the last 2 years, I've been in a management role, overseeing a sales staff as well as still selling. So I've had a few different positions that's given me some different experience, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I've always wanted to work in sports, and fell in love with sales in the process of that.
Yeah, that's really cool that you've been with the Rays for that long. So, just from graduation right into the organization is very, very cool. Now obviously things have changed dramatically in the world, in the sports world. Why don't you kind of just talk about what were the biggest challenges and differences that you saw working within the Rays organization during, during the pandemic so far?
Yeah, so I think this actually was the case for a lot of people, because the whole world changed and a lot of people had to start working remote. But I think that was also one of our biggest challenges for an industry where you're usually at a stadium or you're in a sales office making phone calls. Having to switch over and work remotely was difficult. So getting used to that would probably have been the biggest challenge. Just being a salesperson on a sales floor, all of the energy in the office. It was weird being isolated at home, having to make phone calls that way. And then on the other side of it, because there's kind of two parts to my job. So on the other side of it, keeping the reps engaged, was challenging, especially during such an uncertain time. We didn't know when the season would start. We didn't know if we were going to be able to have fans. So keeping the reps engaged and trying to come up with different projects for them to work on, or different games or competitions just to kind of keep it upbeat like we would in the office. Those were some of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, I couldn't really even imagine the, side swipe. You got to make the complete, 180 of your, business plan. Now the Rays were in the World Series. You were able to go to some of those games. Is that correct?
I was, yeah, I went to 3 of the 6 games.
That's awesome. We mentioned, the pandemic, the World Series this year was at a neutral site in Texas. What was the atmosphere there? It must have been, way different.
Absolutely, it was way different, but I think it was just, in short, just incredible that we were able to have fans in the stadium, and have people watching the World Series. I have a goal of seeing every MLB stadium. So being able to go to Arlington and seeing the Rangers' new ballpark in the first year that it was open was really great as well. So the atmosphere was way different than anything I ever expected or had experienced before. We were all sitting in pods of 4 people, and you were definitely socially distant. So they kept it safe, and it was really incredible to see a live baseball game in 2020, let alone the World Series and the Rays being in it.
Yeah, that's pretty surreal experience. Now I'm going to pivot back to pace related item. I know that since you've graduated, you've stayed connected with the program, stayed connected with Pace, stay supportive, as a part of our Setters Club. Why do you feel it's important to kind of, stay connected with us here at Pace and in that way?
Yeah, so I always believe it's important to give back to the community, and we actually do that a lot with the Rays. But I like to do it in my own personal life as well. So I loved my time at Pace. I would love to give back, and hopefully the students and the student athletes, that are going there now have that same experience that I did.
Yeah, no, that's great. I got one final question for you. It's also pace related. So hypothetically speaking, we'll say that you are going to give some advice to maybe somebody that's starting their either. I guess I got twofold. Either starting their student athlete career, we'll say at Pace or somewhere else, or also what about starting, postgraduate their professional life? What kind of advice would you tell them?
Yeah, so for the first part of that, starting their collegiate career, I would say find balance. When you get to college, you're going to realize that there's so many different things that you can do, whether that's academics, athletics, or social activities, maybe other commitments that you might have. So find a balance between all of that and prioritize what's most important to you. Um, to the other side of that, once you're finishing up your career at Pace and starting into the workforce, I would say be open to trying things that are outside of your comfort zone. Sales for me was very outside of my comfort zone. I was extremely intimidated by making phone calls every day, 100 calls a day. But it really grew on me and I grew as a person because of it. So I would say be open to trying new things.
Yeah, that's great. That's very, I think that's great advice. Jeannie, thank you very much. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for, joining us, and hopefully we could do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.